to LA Legal. I'm Liana. Today I am joined by Houman and Nima, and we'll be talking about Tinder Swindler, Simon Leviev, and Anna Sorokin. I think we should start with Simon Leviev. I think he's probably the most relevant, especially because he's made headlines, again, when it was just announced that he is actually being sued by the real Leviev family. So do you want to go ahead and get started by telling us a little bit about the lawsuit, and we can discuss that, dissect it, and take it from there?
Sure, yeah. So once the Netflix series was aired, obviously there was a lot of attention to his name, to his website. He claimed to be son of a family of this like big diamond tycoons in Israel, right? And went by the name of Simon Leviev. But now the family says that obviously what he did was defamation, so they filed a lawsuit because he's been hurting their brand.
So what's interesting is that according to Israeli law, so they filed both civilly and criminally. So what's interesting is that according to Israeli law, only the state can bring criminal charges. However, there is an exception. And so the Leviev family attorney is saying that because of his conduct, he falls under this exception, which is malice defamation. And so therefore, they are able to bring this lawsuit as private citizens, and they plan on pursuing this fully, to the full extent of Israeli law. I don't really know, obviously, to what extent that is, but I think it's interesting that they're pursuing criminal charges as well.
Yeah. No, I think he deserves to be gone after for the criminal charges and civilly as well. He's obviously hurt a lot of people with this scam. And it was a bit of a Ponzi scheme. I saw Tinder Swindler just last night, so that is the extent of my familiarity. But he fooled one person after another with his at least maybe not promises, but at least implications with his wealth that he'd be able to
Right.
provide to some extent for some of these people, and they fell for it. And he fooled a lot of people, hurt a lot of people, and in the process, though I don't think he had any malice towards the Leviev family. I think he just had complete disregard for who he hurt in order to get what he wanted. And so I think he deserves whatever's coming to him.
I think he had some malice, and I'll tell you why. Because in 2015, he actually went and legally changed his name to Simon Leviev. So we see the sort of premeditated approach to what he intends on doing. So that was, I think, the start of this whole thing, right? He legally changes his name to what's his real name? It's something with an H. I apologize.
Hayat?
Something.
Yeah.
Hayut, yes.
Hayut.
So he changes his name and last name to further this sort of goal, and then he photoshops photos of himself into that family. So to me, there's a decent amount of sort of premeditation into this Ponzi scheme.
Absolutely, it's very
as you
elaborate.
called it, very, very elaborate. Pretty. I mean, can I say this? Pretty genius. I mean, he went...
He's a fraudster.
I mean, he's a fraudster, but
yeah.
like he took it to another level. I mean, we're talking about very elaborate lies, very convincing lies, because he was able to fool not one, not two, but multiple women, multiple companies. So before we talk about that, I do want to talk about the defamation aspect. So why is the family going after him? And that's because he's used the family name to get a lot of these private chartered jets and yachts and villas and all of these lavish things that we saw in the show. He used the Leviev family name in order to get himself onto certain lists and like I said, get private jets and whatnot. So now those companies are going after the Leviev family for compensation, certainly, but also the family just wants to make sure that they are separated from him and people know that they had nothing to do with this scam.
Yeah, obviously the brand's been tarnished, but also I think what he was doing was creating websites, right, under the name, the Leviev family. So I read something about them wanting to actually get those websites from him to make sure nobody's profiting from it.
LLD Diamonds.
There you go, yeah.
So he would just like go on there, and certainly they have websites themselves, but he would tweak certain things to include his name and to include his brand. And so if you do actually Google him, it seems legit.
It would come up, right? Especially since he's changed his name, so
Exactly.
it seemed
legit. Yeah, on the
before he was
surface,
found,
it
yeah,
was
exposed.
legit. So let's talk about the scam a little bit. I don't know if there's really anyone at this point who hasn't heard of this guy. Maybe you haven't seen the documentary or read enough about him. But basically, what he did, he went on Tinder. He met his victims on Tinder. He took them out on very, very lavish dates. He showered them with gifts and these gestures. And first date, he took one of the women, Celia, I think, on a private jet to London. He met with her at the Four Seasons Hotel. So everything about him, including his appearance, seemed to sort of fall in line with this story.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so since you've watched it very recently, tell me a little bit about your thoughts as you were watching this.
Well, part of me felt like I'm still a little bit surprised that they fell for it, because he was so dramatic, talking about he's got these enemies that are after him, and everything came back to that. Every dramatic kind of incident, anytime he had some issues, needed some money, he'd go back to the same reason, that his enemies are chasing him. Would come across as paranoia, I think, for a lot of people. So I think it would be natural to question. I think these women also question, but it's also maybe hard when you want to believe something, perhaps. And so, yeah, it was all very elaborate. He did a lot of premeditated planning. He had the whole wardrobe, tens of thousands of dollars worth of brand name attire, and he really played the part, and he really fooled them. But I still think it's a little bit surprising that they were completely fooled by it, because it seemed a little bit far-fetched.
That's a very good
Houman
answer. You're very politically correct.
Well, look, I think it's because I was thinking the same thing. I was like, why would somebody just give, when you put it in perspective and look at it from an outside, why would anyone, first of all, how did this woman have so much money to fund his lifestyle?
Well, she got all the loans.
A lot of them were getting loans easily, though.
Yeah.
They would just apply for loans and would just get extra lines of credits. And but some of it, he was helping them because he would hire them as his employees, maybe sometimes,
so I think
fabricate
that
checks,
was
things
Celia.
like that.
And for those of you who have watched Tinder Swindler, she was the first woman that appears on it. And so he hired her into the Leviev LLD diamonds,
right.
and then he fabricated fake paychecks.
Pay stubs.
And pay stubs. So it boggles my mind to the extent that he went to. But yes, I agree. He did help them get these high credit lines. And
he did his research on the woman too. He was able to find people that were vulnerable that would fall for it, and they happened to fall in love with them every time. I mean, that in itself is
one. But this is how brilliant he is, because one of the women did not. She says that she was not interested in a romantic relationship with him, but he befriended her anyway, and so he kind of kept her at arm's length, and he fabricated a girlfriend so that she knows that this is just a platonic relationship, and then she fell for it. So he that's why I say it's kind of like a master manipulator, but it's kind of brilliant.
He definitely targeted these women, and his intention the whole time was obviously to scam them out of money, to live the lifestyle he wanted to live. Right. There was some comparisons with Anna Sorokin, the other recent documentary about a scam artist. Well, it's not a documentary, sorry. It was a series, Inventing Anna, on Anna Sorokin, also went by Anna Delvey. She had a dream that she seemed to want to make happen. And I think she really bought into it, and maybe didn't have necessarily bad intentions. She thought her dream would succeed and that everybody would benefit from it. She was just trying to make it happen without actually having her own funding, and trying to fake her own funding on the back so that other people would fund it. But I don't think her intention was to sucker people out of money. Like Simon Leviev's was, to the same extent. She might have also been a little bit delusional. It seemed the show kind of portrayed her as. She might have had a second personality that Anna Delvey took over Anna Sorokin.
I agree with you, but I do want to put a pin on it for a second, because there's a whole lot to uncover there. What I do want to talk about is the fact that Simon Leviev was sentenced to 5 months in prison. So a lot of people have taken issue with this, right? Because they're like, well, he conned so many people. Why is he in prison for 5 months? I want to clarify that he spent 5 months in prison because of charges brought against him prior to this elaborate scheme. So he didn't just wake up one day and decide, hey, I'm going to be swindling people on Tinder. No, he has a history of this. So when he was living in Israel, he conned a family into like babysitting. So it's like little Ponzi schemes here and there. And so he ended up serving a 5 month sentence for that. He's certainly facing more significant charges and a longer prison sentence for the current charges brought against him by the Leviev family as well as the victims.
Yeah, he's been a scam artist the whole time, and he's apparently living the life. He's living as if he's rich, and I don't know where he's getting the money now, maybe who he's fooling now.
Well, he's making club appearances, and he's making like 20 grand per appearance.
Yeah.
So
this documentary probably helped him.
Yeah, I just think maybe it's good because we don't have that option here in the States, right, under defamation to be able to sue both privately for damages as well as criminal charges. So I think maybe that's just a blessing in disguise, and that's why they're doing it. And the other thing is, even though he's getting this $20,000 income for his appearances, he probably doesn't have that much money to be able to pay back, right? So I think the Leviev family is suing him, one, to distance themselves from the brand, from him, separate themselves and shield themselves against the companies that are going to come after them.
And what they have also said publicly is that any money they're able to recover, they're going to give back to the victims, which is, I mean, look, if they're in fact the tycoons that they claim to be, I think they definitely don't need the money. So to me, it definitely does sound like this lawsuit is brought for the sole purpose of distancing themselves and making, because look, I've never heard of this company, I've never heard of this family. Perhaps if we lived in Israel, maybe, but I haven't. So now it's a worldwide known company. So I see why they've made a very strong effort to distance themselves from the situation.
And as a diamond company, it might not be bad to try to get some good publicity and give money to the victims instead of taking it for yourself.
Exactly. Any publicity is good publicity, but I think in this circumstance, I think that's the driving force. So one other thing I want to talk about before we end the Simon Leviev segment of this podcast is the victims, because as with all things on social media, you know, there's a big portion of people who say, you know, well, I feel really bad. You know, how could they have gotten duped? And then there's an even bigger, I think, a community of people who feel like, how did that even happen, right? So without victim shaming, but let's just talk about what we know, right? This guy, you meet him on Tinder, he takes you on 1 or 2 dates, and then almost immediately he starts asking for money, right? So I think, in my opinion, let me backtrack. So my issue with all the money that was given to him by these women was, at what point do you stop and say, wow, this is a lot of money. It's not fine. The first 10K, maybe I can get on board with, but now it's like 40, 50. Some of them gave him in excess of $250,000. That's a lot of money to be taking out on behalf of someone that you don't really know. And so my issue was, at no point in time did these women think, for someone who is this diamond mogul, does he not have cash stacked somewhere? Okay, I understand people are after you. You have enemies, mysterious enemies. You can't use your credit cards. Okay, I can get on board. No cash? You've got zero stacked somewhere? I mean, people like that generally have money somewhere, right? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think I touched on it earlier. I think, you know, the heart wants what it wants. Confirmation bias is a strong thing. So I think they wanted to believe that he was legitimate, that they had found somebody that was so charming and took care of them, and they were willing to do what it took to kind of further this relationship. And probably, I'm sure they had their doubts, but told themselves otherwise and hoped for the best. And it just turned out to be that little voice in their head was probably right all along.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just an asshole, but I don't see it. Sorry. But I appreciate that.
I think we talked about this earlier, right? He obviously targeted these women who were vulnerable. But if you watch the show too, it's quick, but it's not that quick because he tried to spend a lot of time with them, right? He flies them in and out, and then he's texting, they're talking like daily, and then at some point during the text messages, you know, he's telling them how much he loves them, they want to have a baby together, they want to get married, right. And then he even had, you know, a couple of them to get flown to different places in London looking for apartments, and I give him a budget, you know, an apartment for $20,000 a month. Yeah. Go look for his apartments, and you know, people get excited. Especially again, they were vulnerable. They were in a position that like, hey, this is a guy that I love. And when you Google his name at the time, everything checked out. Right. And he set it up. It's almost like, like you said, he's kind of a genius. The way he set it up. That he had his bodyguard that they would talk, and then one day he would show that the bodyguard was attacked or something. Right. Look at him.
And so one of the women actually was interviewed recently. I forget which news station, but she said she was pressed about the same thing. Like, how did you fall for this kind of a con? And she said most people just don't have a bodyguard. Like, why would this big dude be following him around? And so it sounds like this was sort of a selling point for her. But again, I'm just like, he could have just been a buddy, and they're sharing this.
Also, look, it's too good to be true, and sometimes like Nima said is that confirmation bias, right? Because it's too good to be true, but they want to believe it. They want it to be true. It's that fantasy that like is finally coming true. That I met the love of my life, and he has all this money. He's hiring me. He's giving me the money. He has X, Y, and Z. And then originally he doesn't ask him for a lot of money. He starts small.
Oh, only 20
he goes,
grand.
give me like this. Give me a let me get a credit card. It's only like $5,000, and then like it just goes up.
That's a lot of money to be giving to people you met on Tinder. I'm sorry. I'm going to stay firm on this.
I mean, if they spend a ton of money on you, though, like if he's flying him on a private jet to places, they're like,
exactly.
he
should have rich friends who don't have enemies that he can borrow money from. Like, to me, the whole thing, at some point you have to stop. I understand, but I also think at some point you have to stop and be like, something's not right here. Instead of, hey, MX, I need a credit line increase.
That to me was the craziest part of it, where they would just call MX and try to prove every single one. I mean, that's past the point of trying to even disputing the charges and say it's fraudulent, because they're like, yeah, it's me.
Yeah, exactly. And you're saying it's me, and you're seeing the amount of charges, and they're daily, and
to me, it's just one of those things when you're doing it and you're like, this is a bad idea, and I know it's a bad idea, and I feel it in my gut, but I'm going to do it
anyway
because I want it to be true, and I want it to be good.
I think we've all done that a little bit ourselves. Yeah. So I can relate, but you expect people to lie a little bit, put their best, I say lying on dating apps, put their best foot forward, play the part, put the best pictures of themselves they have up. So you expect people not to be exactly who they are, but this is completely different. This guy fabricated a whole person and just fooled one person after another with the intention of using their money to live a certain lifestyle. And he showed promises of them being able to live that lifestyle with him. It just turned out not to be true.
Nowadays with social media and the digital footprint that's out there, it's so much easier to do these things, right? Because I mean, he was verified on Instagram. He had a ton of followers. And
I don't remember if it was somebody at the firm or I read somewhere, but he apparently got scammed by the person who was supposed to verify him. Something
I heard about that too.
Did you hear about that?
Like one of the girls said, like somebody like reached out to him and said, I have like family members working at Facebook.
Yeah, and
give me X amount of money, we'll try to get you verified.
And then he got scammed.
Yeah, I heard about that too.
So okay, I think this is a good transition to talk a little bit about Anna. Anna Devine.
Anna Delvey was the made-up name. Anna Sorokin.
Anna Sorokin is the actual person. So you alluded to her a little bit. Tell us briefly about what her story is. We started off with the dream, but what was it? She wanted to be part of that New York elite.
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly her background. I think she came from Germany, though might have had some Russian background. And her dream was to start this social club. And where the elite would come and it would just kind of have everything and be high society, and wanted to make a business out of this. And she pretended to be an heiress to some huge
$50 million fortune.
Yeah, some huge fortune, and had a trust. But her dad would, lock it up sometime, keep her from getting the money, and needed to always ask people to support her. She'd stay at hotels, said the money's coming, and defrauded a bunch of hotels out of free stays, basically. Not that these hotels are hurting.
So unlike Simon Leviev, who had a fake bodyguard, she had a fake financial advisor who she used to con banks out of whatever the amount of money that she was trying to get, because she had this financial advisor who could attest to the amount of money she has and the fortune that she has coming in.
Yeah, and quotes is right, because her financial advisor, well, maybe I shouldn't, spoiler alert.
No, it's okay.
Her financial advisor was her with just a voice
right.
modification tool. So, so she was trying to fool these banks into investing in her company. And, you know, the point of investing is to make money off something. So I don't think the point of her point was to steal. It was just to try to get this dream to happen at any cost. And I think she really bought into it. This accent, this personality that she created. It's maybe she fooled herself a little bit in the process. But, you know, I think she wasn't as malicious in what she wanted to do. Even the one individual that she fooled, profited in the end. Katie Lowe's, I think her name is. She wrote a book, and she got all of money refunded from Amex or whatever the credit card was. And honestly, they were all enjoying the same trip together that they paid for. She was hoping to have a free ride, and ultimately she ended up having to pay for it. And then she decided to turn on her friend that she said she loved. In the end, she was fine for it. Profited off of it, and I think Annandale was a little bit more of a genius and maybe a little bit more deluded, but I think she had a well-intentioned dream, just went about it at all costs. That's all.
You're also a little bit of a bleeding heart, so
Yeah,
I'm going to take that with a grain. I see where you're coming from.
I believe in the good in people.
You do.
You know?
This one time, I see where you're.
Heartless.
Look, it is what it is, right? I mean, that's just this makes for a good conversation. But I see where you're coming from. I feel like I would have felt the same had I not watched her in trial and had I not seen some of her interviews. She has zero remorse.
Yeah.
And she does not take accountability for a thing. She doesn't think she's a crook. And so multiple times when she's asked, you fraud, she's like, what fraud? She's like, if you're stupid to fall for it, then that's on you. So that's her attitude. And I think it makes it very difficult to like somebody like that and try to kind of see the good in someone who is just very like, too bad, so sad.
Yeah, but part of me is also, those banks, those companies that were trying to invest in her, they wouldn't have had an issue if she did have this $60 million behind her. But they all loved her idea. So because she wasn't this extremely wealthy person who could, return the favor or what have you, as opposed to them just profiting from their investment in her idea, they had a problem with it. But they wouldn't have had a problem if she was this other wealthy person like they were. So they had a problem because she wasn't wealthy. So
It's a little bit of like a Robin Hood type thing.
A little bit. You know what?
I don't know
her
if
idea
it's
was
like to that extent, but I agree with you
to some extent that her situation, her story was a little bit more different from Simon Leviev. And the reason for it, because like you said, he was going against people, he was going after people, he was defrauding people.
He had to know what he was doing.
And he knew exactly what he was doing. But with her, and I think it's time for another one of my Seinfeld references, George always says it's not a lie if you believe in it. She put up this persona.
That's right.
She made up this lie, and she believed in it. And for her, the way like I read the stories
Simon
when
believed
I
in
said
his lies too.
Well, for her, it was kind of like, this is like a fight for survival, right? Yeah. I'm gonna come in. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna try to get this money.
He can argue there's a fight for survival too. I mean, he wants to lead that lavish lifestyle,
at
and
the
this
end
is
of the
his way of
day,
getting
like
it.
most of there are hotels that like gave her a ton of money and they're not even coming forward. They're just like whatever.
She didn't hurt anybody in the end. Some
they're just both crooks.
They are.
I
We
think
agree.
they can.
We
Okay.
agree. Absolutely, we agree. And she's actually
Making
serving
sure
time
that
now.
we're not
No, we agree.
She just doesn't believe. She just doesn't believe it. I think she sincerely believed that what she was doing was okay. So there's less malice there. I think.
I don't think that's less malice per se, but I agree that like again the story is different.
Yeah,
the type of fraud is different.
I think what you guys are trying to get to, which hear me out. I think what you guys are trying to get to is that it's okay to defraud. She basically defrauded rich people, right? So like banks and stuff, versus someone who's more vulnerable, right?
Well, okay,
So
this is
that's
my
why
point.
she's
I think this
not
is a
being
distinction I'm trying to make. It's so much easier to fool a person than it is a bank, and it's to me it is on the bank that was being defrauded because I have so many different like systems and securities in place to make sure to prevent these types of things, right? So if a bank fell for a trust fund baby who has millions of dollars but there's no money, and they just want to wrote a blank check to fund her lifestyle is different.
There's a distinction I want to make clear and why I defend her a little bit. You know, she was maybe trying to defraud them, as far as fool them into thinking that she had these funds so that they would invest. But she wasn't trying to, like Simon Leviev, take money from these women and have no intention of returning it. Her intention was to get these people to invest in her idea and have the idea be a booming success. She had huge dreams of it. And if it is a booming success, then those banks are going to recover their investment and then some. She was just trying to get them to take that initial step without the promise of her having this fortune to back it up to begin. She was trying to fool them into taking a greater risk than what they would have taken otherwise. But her intention the whole time was to have a successful social club.
Or so she says, right? So when she's handed, let's say, $20 million or whatever her investment was, who knows?
Look, and she was a pathological liar. We know that. She told a different story to everybody. Like, I'm not defending her by any means. I'm just saying there's a distinction between the two.
I agree there's a distinction, certainly. But I think that I can't sympathize with one over the other. Right. To me, they're both scummy people, and I think one is a little bit more of like a sociopath than the other, to be completely honest with you. I think it's a little bit of a difference of opinion as to who we think is the sociopath. But, they both are just bad people. They both conned, whether it's a bank. They wanted to get rich fast by lying, defrauding. And there's a reason why there's laws against these things. Sure. And so it leads me to my next point. These people are now celebrities in our culture. Yeah, right. And so what does that say about us is that we kind of take these like bad actors and we glorify them. We're not paying them $20,000 per club appearance. She's getting a book deal. She has some kind of like a Netflix contract where she, not even just a documentary, I think she's doing something else on top. So what do you think about this glorification of people like that?
I think that's just, we've talked about this in other podcasts, but
I thought I heard,
it's just like, that's just the era we're in. Like, people thrive on these things. They love the drama. They love saying this stuff, and
it's nothing
and
new.
They're just monetizing on it. And you can't really stop it.
The serial killer documentaries were huge recently. So,
right. But I think what's interesting is that it almost, it doesn't serve as like a deterrence, right? So if you get in trouble and you are just done for and you're never heard from again, then the next swindler will think twice about what they're doing. But I feel like it's almost like I'll do this, I may serve a prison sentence. Like she says, by the way, she has was it Good Morning America? She was on some kind of a show, 60 Minutes, and she's like, yeah, I served time and that was great. I don't regret it.
Right,
okay. And so why? Because she knew she's coming out and she's going to have a book deal. She's going to have all these things. So someone else who wants to potentially follow this path is going to think, all right, I'll serve a few years, but when I come out, I'm going to be a celebrity. That's right. It might be worth it. Yeah. And so that is my problem with this new culture that we're a part of.
Right. Well, the only thing we can do is not watch these documentaries.
But we do anyway, but we do.
And then as we sit here and talk
about it. And then we sit here and talk about it. And then people watch us talk about it. So it's a cycle. So that's just about all the time we have. Thank you for joining me this week, Houman and Nima. Thank you to all of our viewers. Please subscribe on YouTube and follow us on all of our podcast platforms.